Well, we are very pleased to welcome some special guests into our studio this morning on the morning show. They've been with us a few times. The sold out show last night at First Avenue. If you weren't able to make it, that's okay, because we have a special treat for you in studio with us this morning. We have Tegan and Sara. Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for coming in.
Who doesn't love a good morning show?
A good morning show.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but we try. Who else do you have here with us?
We have Ted Gowans on keyboard and guitar. Well, sorry, he plays keyboard and guitar in our band, but just today he's just on guitar. It's too early for him to play keyboard. And then over on Sarah's left, for people listening, we've got John Spence, and he's playing piano and keyboard.
Well, welcome back to the Twin Cities.
Thank you so much.
You guys have a pretty long tour ahead of you. So are you really kind of early in the tour right now?
You know, it's interesting. Like, the record came out in January, so we're sort of like on our first big tour after the record has come out, but we've actually been going since August. We've been doing a lot of promo and ended up getting a support gig with the Black Keys, and following that we did a big tour in Europe with the Killers, and then followed that up with another tour of the US with the Killers. So we're actually probably about 4.5 months into an album cycle that officially only started a few weeks ago. So we sort of have the we have the fatigued weariness of people who've actually been traveling a lot longer than we normally would before an album came out. But
Well, we're glad you're here.
we sound better than we normally would sound with a new record. You know,
That's
we
right.
just
songs are
we're
tighter
tight-
and we're more
tighter.
rehearsed, which is good. So
All right, well, why don't we start with a classic?
please.
A Tegan and Sara classic. So, all right, what record are we going back to here?
This is from The Con, so 2006, and it's a song called Back in Your Head. 1, 2, 3, 4. A wall of books between us in our bed. Repeat the words that I know we both said. Relax into the need, we get so comfortable. Remember when I was so strange and likable. I just want back in your head. I just want back in your head. I'm not unfaithful, but I stray. When I get a little scared, when I get a little scared, when I get a little, when I jerk away from holding hands with you, I know these habits hurt important parts of you. Remember when I'm sweet and unexplainable. I'm nothing like this person, unlovable. I just want back in your head. I just want back in your head. I'm not unfaithful, but I stray. When I get a little scared, when I get a little scared, when I get a little scared, when I get a little run, I just want back in your head. I just want back in your head. I'm not unfaithful, but I stray. I'm not unfaithful, but I stray. I'm not unfaithful, but I stray. I'm not unfaithful, but I stray.
89.3 The Current. That is Tegan and Sara live here in studio on the morning show. and Back in Your Head, going back to the Con record a few years ago. And the brand new record, though, is called Heartthrob, the 7th studio album from these guys. And congratulations on the massive success of this record. Billboard's chart entering at number 3.
Yeah, it's been really exciting. We were, as Sara had said earlier, like because there was such a long lead up to the record, there was so many months of conversation with media and radio and press and our fans and our family and our band and our management about will people get the record? Like, is it too big of a change from what people have come to expect of Tegan and Sara? And, we kept saying, well, we really feel like the songs are so good, like they're classic Tegan and Sara songs, so the production shouldn't hold the record back. But there was still that little tiny flame inside of me still being like, maybe people are gonna hate it. But it's been overwhelming, the response, and it's just feels really great because we really did put everything we had into this one. So it feels like a really great way to celebrate all of that hard work. So
Yeah, it's safe to say that your sound has evolved.
I think so.
Yeah, and it's got a real, like, just a heavy pop sound to it. And you worked with a few different producers. Talk about who you worked with on this record.
The majority of the record was made with Greg Kirsten, and he had done work that the familiar stuff was Lily Allen, Kylie Minogue. He had just finished the Shins record, and he had done some.
We liked that he had
Foster
done
people.
like the big pop singers
Yeah.
and the indie stuff as well.
I mean, the truth is that like I love pop music. I listen to a lot of I love the last Kylie Minogue record. I love Taylor Swift and Alicia Keys and like that sort of thing. So I wasn't afraid to work with somebody from the pop world. But as Tegan mentioned, there was something nice about the fact that he had sort of worked across the spectrum. Like he had started in sort of more like avant-garde, sort of abstract music in his own right, in his own bands, and then had also sort of like been a musical director and had worked with Beck, and so he was definitely familiar with our world, and I thought he would be a really interesting sonic and idea bridge to the pop world for us.
How do you get connected with a producer? I mean, when you do you think, oh, Greg Kirsten, we love his work and we want to see if we can work with him? Is it just like sort of dating? You see if you can
exactly
make
like
things
dating.
work with the producer, like could you have space on your calendar and then you have to figure out whether or not you can get along or what?
Yeah,
How does it go?
Basically, just describe the process. I mean, once we were maybe 15 or 16 songs into writing the record, we started to get a general idea of the direction we wanted to go in, and Sara and I had sat down prior to starting to write and had decided we really did want to venture a little bit further outside of our box than we had in the past. And I think, we've always cited all of these 80s and early 90s bands as our, influences, and then it sounded nothing like them. So there was something really exciting about actually saying, like, let's try to make a record that actually emulates the stuff we grew up on. And Greg was at the top of our list, and it was kind of like speed dating. I met with 15, 16 different producers, but Greg was the first person I met with, and I played him 2 songs of mine, a song called Closer and a song called I Was a Fool, and I played him one of Sara's called Shock to Your System, and he called us from vacation maybe 2 weeks later. He'd had time to sit with the demos, and it had initially started out as maybe he'd do a song or 2, then it was 4, then it was 6, and then it ended up being 8. So he just really fell in love with the project, and he really got it. He listened to a song like I Was a Fool, which is in demo form was just me playing piano and a little bit of acoustic guitar. And instead of saying, oh, we'll keep it organic and put an orchestra on it, which is like what most of the other producers said, he was like, this is a pop song. Like, this is a song that you could hear on pop radio, just needs the right production. And I think that you guys should stop holding yourselves back. And that was something that a lot of people had been saying to us. So I felt like Greg was the right person. So I said to Sara, I think you should have breakfast with him. And I showed up at breakfast, and they'd already, been there for 20 minutes, and I could just tell from Sara's energy this was the guy we were going to pick to make the record.
Do you write together? Do you write separately? I mean, what is your process?
Often it's definitely a sort of individual, separate kind of process for us. I mean, we live in different cities, and often we're doing the bulk of our songwriting when we're at our respective homes, and we'll often send tracks to each other, like, check this out and give me some feedback and like that sort of thing. So that's like our collaboration, I think, is fairly modern, but because it's the way that we've always worked, like even when we were young, we didn't like sit in our bedrooms like jamming it out together. We would always write the songs independently, and then we would usually add some background vocals or some
We
rudimentary
used each
guitar.
other like session players. I'd invite
little
Sara
bit.
over to my bedroom when I was 15, and I'd be like, would you like to play
It is true.
some guitar on my song? We're going to record it on the Ghetto Blaster
That's
here.
great.
Like,
Yeah.
run the tape recorder for me, and you can also sing and play on it too.
That's exactly what it was. So now it's just a little bit. Now we're just 3,000 miles between us, and
See, Sara, you ruined my whole vision of the two of you.
just jamming it
I figured
out.
you had these 2 identical houses houses up in
next
Canada,
door.
and you would just kind of walk over and knock on the door. And
No,
Sometimes
we
it would certainly be easier, but Sarah's right. It's a very modern relationship, and we're able to send music over the internet. And
this band is so much about the collaboration and the sort of compromise of decision making, you know, whether it's like artwork or photos or like Tegan was saying about producers, you know, there's this one sort of sacred piece of our world that is our own, and that's songwriting. And you know, we still obviously have to come in and do a tremendous amount of work to, you know, make the songs sound cohesive, and there's certainly lots of collaboration and deliberation in the studio and all of that type of thing. But those first sparks, like those first few moments where you're with a song by yourself and writing the words and coming up with the melodies, I mean, that's just like, that's where we get to finally be by ourselves, you know.
We're with Tegan and Sara here in studio on 89.3 The Current's morning show with Steve Seal and Jill Riley. Now, you guys alluded to this song as one that Greg Kirsten said, this is a pop song, so why not just go for it? Now, we're going to sort of dial it back yet again here in studio again, but this is cool. We're going to hear this. So, again, tell us about this song and a little bit of a background on the song.
well, Sarah had sort of pushed me when we started writing she wanted me to try to not write everything that I usually do, which is very leaning on the sort of self-deprecating, self-loathing, sad, depressed, just got broken up with kind of button. I'm just like pushing that one.
I'm laughing here. That's great.
Yeah, no, but it's true. And I haven't been sad or depressed for any of those things for a really long time, but I think it's really fun and interesting to go back and explore those feelings and process them all over again. So my side of the record is actually quite romantic and nostalgic. I didn't end up writing a lot of depressing songs, but this one, I Was a Fool, did sneak in, and I did try to write it with a sense of humor. I mean, the idea that I stuck around through a lot of really tough stuff, and you know, that the relationships probably seemed very ridiculous from the outside, and that I was sort of playing the fool. But you know, the bridge is the twist in the song, and Sarah wrote it, and it's sort of this idea that if you think that I've given up on all my foolish ways, well, then you're wrong. Like, I'm still that person. I didn't really necessarily learn everything I should have. So that was sort of the intention of the song. But I tried to write it as if Rihanna was playing it. So
all right, well, let's hear it.
Absolutely,
It's called I Was a Fool from the new Tegan and Sara record, Heartthrob. And they were in town last night, sold out show at First Avenue. And here they are live on the Current Morning Show.
Do you remember I searched you out? How I climbed your city's walls. Do you remember me as devout? How I prayed for your cause. I stood still is what I did. Love like ours is never fixed. I stuck around. I did behave. Said you every time. I was a fool for love. I was a fool for love. I was a fool. I was a fool. Then you blame me and block me out. How long did you think I'd last? Then you disappear for weeks about. How many times could I pack? But stand still is all I did. Love like ours is never fixed. I stuck around. Yes, I did behave. I said you every time. I was a fool for love. I was a fool for love. I was a fool.
101.3 The Current. Tegan and Sara here live in studio on the morning show. That is I Was a Fool, and it's on the new record, Heartthrob. Always nice to have you guys here in studio, and thanks again for coming back.
Thanks for having us.
I want to ask you about the name of the album. How did you arrive at the title, Heartthrob?
This was probably one of the more challenging albums to title. We definitely have a back and forth and a debate every time we make a record, and there's always like sort of a playful, like we tease each other about certain titles, or now it seems funny to me that we would have ever considered anything other than The Con or Sainthood, for example. Like you become so attached to that idea and how it connects the album together. But I think because we approached this record so differently in terms of like where we were both coming from, and then also just we knew it was just such an important record for us. I think we debated more on this record than any other, maybe all of them combined, all of our other albums combined. I think it was the hardest title to arrive at.
But then Sara and I got to the boiling point. Like Sara said, it was an arduous process, and it went back and forth for a month, and finally I sent my favorites. And Sara wrote back immediately and said, Heartthrob, I never saw that one. I love it.
You know what was interesting, too, was it really did take...
Well, Sara told me I wasn't allowed to write about my heart, so it was a coup for me to get heart in the title of the record.
But you know what sold it for me was our art director. She would sometimes take some of the titles and she would sort of throw them into this... it was like a mood board. Like we'd collected images and ideas, like words and pictures, basically, and sort of like a document that we were using to sort of explain to the photographer and the label and the video people, where this record was coming from. And she took Heartthrob and put it into that document and used a certain font, and it sort of had an aesthetic to it, and that was what really sold me, because it seemed dark. It seemed like it wasn't like a silly or like a young title. It was sort of something that sort of had this like melancholy to it and mystery.
We would have like failed our SATs because we didn't really truly answer your question. But
no,
but we definitely want Heartthrob to feel open to interpretation. People have taken it more of the like very literal, your heart throbs, or you're singing about heartthrobs. But I was
thinking Tiger Beat 1984.
Yeah, which
we've
we've thematically like tried to come up with like art that works for that, and we definitely were fascinated culturally like by the idea of a heartthrob, and the fact that we all kind of go through a phase in our lives where we idolize someone, and put photos of them up on our wall. But I love the transition from being a teenager and having this obsession on someone that isn't real and isn't, to a real person. So now I go from loving, whoever to loving you and you're real. But the idea that we transfer still a lot of that, fake idol worship onto someone that we actually know. And so I feel that's why Sara and I are such tortured people, is that we tend to idolize the people we fall in love with. Mm-hmm. And we tend to put them up on a pedestal, and it makes that love somewhat, detrimental sometimes. So, and that's truly what the record is about, so.
So you have these series of short film sort of interview things that you can see, and they're all over YouTube, and they're on your website as well, where you talk to other people about who were heartthrobs for them.
Yeah.
Like Ben Lee is one, and you talk to some other people, and I just wonder, but see, I don't remember, unless I missed it, you guys revealing who were heartthrobs for you.
Well, it's interesting because I had that idea of interviewing people who were uncommon heartthrobs. Like, I think a lot of times when we think of heartthrobs, first of all, we think of men. I think it's a title that I don't think we would necessarily say like Britney Spears is a heartthrob. We would say she was like a sex symbol, or
sure.
There would be sort of like gendered ideas about like who can be what. And I loved that we were sort of turning that on its head a little bit in a
appropriating it for
female. Just like I like the idea that Tegan and I we don't have maybe the traditional heteronormative look to us, but there are definitely people who out there who would say that we're that whatever, like that we're cute, or that we're their heartthrobs or whatever. And so I really liked taking it in that direction. But when I think back to who were heartthrobs for me, it was men. Like even as a kid, and I obviously I'm gay, and I can now sort of like deconstruct what I found interesting in men as a child. Probably was that I was interested in being like them in a lot of ways. Like I liked the idea that the guys that I was interested in, like Joey McIntyre, for example, from New Kids on the Block.
Thank you very much.
I really liked his look. There it is. And I could objectify him as a kid. Like I could be like, I love Joey McIntyre, along with all my girlfriends. But I think that probably what I was drawn to was that I wanted to look like him. And I wanted girls to have the response that they had to Joey McIntyre to me.
Like
Yeah.
I wanted girls to behave like that.
And it's so cool. You have people in your little films talking about that kind of dynamic as
Yep.
well. You know, Ben
Yeah.
Lee talking about who was it, like a Motley Crue or
Yeah.
somebody.
So into
And
metal
you're-
bands.
so, I
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
which is a really cool dynamic to explore. You know,
Well, a
Doesn't
lot of
get
our
talked about
younger
a lot.
heartthrobs, I think when we're kids, we don't necessarily imagine ourselves like marrying our heartthrobs. We probably are just trying to emulate them. And then we're sort of like looking for a way to sort of become interesting and get attention by looking like the people who in our lives get lots of attention.
You're listening to The Current, and we're in studio with Tegan and Sara. The new record is Heartthrob. You had us sort of reminiscing. We were looking at your website, and we noticed that you can buy the sheet music for all the songs on the record. And we were sort of reminiscing about, buying the guitar books of our, our favorite artists. Was that kind of what you guys wanted to do to put it out there for your fans?
I mean, it's not a massive demand. We didn't put the sheet music up and it was like, we've sold thousands and thousands,
Thousands of copies.
Yeah.
Certainly
More
is
than our
niche.
record.
Yeah. But I think that one of the things that Sarah and I treasure most is our relationship with our audience, and there is an intimacy there, and we do listen. We do polls, and, we ask our fans basically what they want, and there did seem to be a desire to have sheet music for a lot of the new music and a lot of the old music. And since, piano and keyboard has gotten progressively more significant and integral in the music, and it's such a focus of the music, it felt like the right time to put it up there.
You were talking earlier about how when you were growing up and playing music and everything, did you like go to fake books and like, learn the songs by artists and whatnot? Did you?
We took like two guitar lessons and learned a couple Nirvana songs.
We
I
were
think
pretty
Sarah
into the
learned to
Guns N'
Smashing
Roses.
Pumpkins.
We had the Guns N' Roses
Awesome.
songbook on piano. And we
But
would
the
play
piano,
November
but
Rain.
for guitar, like
Yeah.
once we got into like guitar, we like learned a couple songs and you learned the basic chords, and then we just started writing our own music. It was like we couldn't even be bothered to learn other people's music. We were like, part of the problem was that Sarah and I took classical piano for 9 years, and we were taking like Royal Conservatory and like doing all the theory and whatever. I feel like it was a rebellious act to play guitar. We wanted to just do it completely different and forget everything we'd ever learned, basically. So,
Well, let's hear one more song from the new record. Before we let you go, we'd like to thank a few people. Our engineer today, Michael DeMarc, assistant engineer Zach Seeger, and producer Derek Stevens. And of course, Tegan, Sara, thank you very much. Ted and John, thanks for stopping in as well. So set up this last song for us.
Sure. Closer is the song that we're about to play. And it was one of the songs that really floored me when I got it as a demo from Tegan. We had already been writing for the record for quite a few months, and I mean, I'm a huge fan, obviously, of Tegan. It sometimes is probably
Sarah.
you're welcome, but it's I
That
think
helps
it's
your relationship.
it's
as sisters,
difficult
yeah.
sometimes
Thanks a
to
lot.
you have to realize how biased you are sometimes, and so there's I very rarely receive anything from Tegan that I think like, oh, this really stinks or whatever, but this was definitely
Rarely,
one
which
rarely,
means
which
it
means
has
that's happened.
It
for the
has
record, I've
happened.
never
It
received a
comes
song
out
from Sarah I
now.
didn't
Guys,
love.
we've been writing songs since we were 15. I mean, if Tegan can honestly say she's never thought one of my songs sucked, she's lying. But this was one of those songs that as soon as I got it right from the get-go, I knew it was going to be something different, and it sort of had these like really significant moments in terms of like the melody and the hooks, and I thought there was something really interesting in her vocal delivery. I mean, it really became the focal point of the album. Even in the studio, we tried to give as much time to every song as we possibly could, but we probably ended up working this song about 10 times as long as the other songs, and we really we worked the heck out of the chorus, and it turned out great. And Tegan can say more about the messaging of the song. You always say it's like a get it on kind of song.
Yeah, it was like our first makeout song. I wanted to write something that on the surface felt really, kind of jubilant and reminds you of your childhood. A nostalgic time for me was sort of graduating high school. Right around that time, you have your whole world ahead of you. You have your whole life ahead of you, and you're not bogged down with a lot of the big life issues that come with being an adult. And
More free time to make out with people.
Yeah, and making out.
I'm like, at least for me,
not
my
to-
post high school experience.
Well, I like I said, it's like I was trying to write universally, but like I was even trying to think about the time before you actually even make out with someone. Like that's why I used the word specifically "closer." Is that I wanted to capture that instant, that moment. Sometimes it lasted a lifetime, sometimes it lasted a minute, depending on if you had any sort of self-control. But the idea of stretching that time as long as possible before you ever make contact
it's like
with someone.
emotional tantric experience.
Yeah, exactly. Just that idea. So there's a kind of a dark side to it because the relationship does not come to fruition in the song. So the bridge is the twist. It's the dreams of you and me. Like it's the times past that the sort of I'm still snuck a little unrequited love in there. So but the idea is that you're supposed to absolutely drive around in a car with someone you like and make out with them to the song.
Not while you're driving.
Not while you're driving. Get a
driving,
driver.
please.
Hire a
More
driver.
dangerous than texting and driving. you guys.
True. That is such awesome background to the song. So can't wait to hear it here in studio. And nice to see you guys again. Thanks again
Absolutely.
for
Thanks
coming
for having
back.
us.
We'll see you again. Tegan and Sara here live on the morning show on 89.3 The Current. And from the new one, Heartthrob, it's Closer.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Little bit closer. All I wanna know is, can you come a little closer? Here comes a breath before we get a little bit closer. Here comes a rush before we touch. Come a little closer. The doors are open, the wind is really blowing. Night sky is changing overhead. It's not just our physical. I'm the type who will get oh so critical. So let's make things physical. I won't treat you like you're oh so typical. I won't treat you like you're oh so typical. All you think of lately is getting underneath me. All I dream of lately is how to get you underneath me. Here comes the heat before we meet a little bit closer. Here comes the spark before the dark. Come a little closer. The lights are off and the sun is finally setting. Night sky is changing overhead. It's not just our physical. I'm the type who will get oh so critical. So let's make things physical. I won't treat you like you're oh so typical. Oh, I want you close. I want you. I won't treat you like you're typical. I want you close. I want you. I won't treat you like you're typical. Here come the dreams of you and me. Here come the dreams. Here come the dreams of you and me. Here come the dreams. It's not just our physical. I'm the type who will get oh so critical. So let's make things physical. I won't treat you like you're oh so typical. I want you close. I want you. I won't treat you like you're typical. I want you close. I want you. I won't treat you like you're typical. I won't treat you like you're typical. I won't treat you like you're typical. All I wanna get is a little bit closer. All I wanna know is, can you come a little closer?